Hey folks, Troy Dooley here, the Beachside CEO with Kevin Thompson, aka the MLM attorney. You know, I just typed that in the other day, just MLM attorney, and it's
right.
like, your picture, dude, comes up everywhere.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, we know what we're doing over at Thompson Burton. You know, it's taken. Most people don't know this, but I actually launched a social network for law students.
No way, really?
You probably didn't even know this.
No, I didn't.
I launched this about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Good idea, but there was this small company that was starting to take off around that time called Facebook. But during that process, I learned a lot about just SEO and online marketing, and everything I learned from that experience, I'm able to roll into my practice.
Man, that's fantastic. Now, you've expanded, because as you said, Thompson Burton, you've got a partner now, and you guys do more than just network marketing, direct selling stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're having a great time, and Walt is a good friend of mine, and he's a fantastic lawyer. We both are at a place in our career where we just wanted to do more. Okay. The law office of Kevin Thompson, things were fantastic. I was providing a good living for my family, having a really good time. But I wanted to make a statement. I didn't want to just make a living.
Sure. And
you make a statement by building a business. And there's no industry that's more ripe for disruption than the legal profession. It's just run by older and stodgy people, inflexible people.
It's kind of like banking.
It's similar to banking, I guess. And, you know, we just wanted to sort of rewrite the rules. And he had a good practice with commercial real estate. I had my MLM practice. Mm-hmm. There's no synergies there at all, but we're both aligned in the sense that we want to build a big firm. So what's happened, we picked up a litigator who's just
you mentioned that.
He's a stellar litigator. Cole Dowsley, who's a partner in a firm in Nashville. Okay. We've got an employment lawyer coming on board here in the next couple of months. Really, really exciting. And we're starting to feel some synergies. Some clients of mine, if they have litigation issues, I can walk right next door to my guy.
Yeah, that's great.
We can take care of problems. And that happens quite frequently these days, you know, with what's happening online and smear campaigns and all this stuff. We can do a lot of things for people.
You mentioned online, and with your SEO background and social media, I'm going to ask you a question, because I know that you've reported a little bit on this, but some companies are using a clause about disparaging comments, and they're using it with social media, where some of these guys are just switching companies to another company. They're putting on about their new company. It's not really disparaging comments, but they're seeing it as cross-recruiting or disparaging comments, stuff like that. Is that something that distributors need to worry about?
They do, actually. I wrote an article about this about a year ago. It's titled "When Distributors Leave a Network Marketing Company," and I give some advice. And the issue that you're talking about is solicitation. So if I have a Facebook account and I join a juice company,
yeah,
and I build up a following on my Facebook account, both with friends and also subscribers, I subsequently leave this company and I go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. That juice company can say, well, hey, you're soliciting people you did not enroll. You would not know these people in your Facebook account had it not been for us. They can make the argument. I have not seen it litigated to the distance, and whether or not that argument prevails, but I suspect that it would prevail.
Would it prevail then, like if I'm in lead generation, if I put an ad in like a home biz advertiser then, and I've switched from this company to this company, and that rag happens to be an industry rag, could that be seen as solicitation too, even though it's print?
If I'm not familiar with print advertising, but if you start from scratch, like if you start a brand new platform and you put it out there what you're doing, that's not solicitation.
Okay.
Facebook's different because you have those connections that are there, where one company can say, well, hey, those connections wouldn't be there if it weren't for us.
Oh, okay.
Right, that's kind of the argument.
I see where you're at.
One thing I recommend, and nobody does it because it's really tough to do, if you're a big leader, consider deleting your profile.
I've said that. I've told people, why don't you just go wipe out everybody who's in your downline, or wipe out everybody that says Ocean Avenue, or says Yoli, or says this, and, well, Troy, that's all my friends. Well, that's the problem.
We'll start over. Or you can create a fan page, you know, so-and-so Zango distributor. You know, and it's a fan page where people have to opt in to get your message, and that way you're not soliciting anybody. There's another a networker out there, I don't want to mention his name, but he says, hey everybody, I'm in a new company, I just want to give you a heads up, I want to give you 1 week's notice. You know, if you don't want to receive solicitations from me regarding this new company, please remove me. That was clever, right? Is it good enough? we'll find out.
It's a great marketing deal. Hey, at least
Yeah,
people know. Now we can go Google what company is he in.
That's,
so you know,
it's true.
It's I don't know. It's strange the way social media has changed what we do in direct selling.
Oh my gosh, it's news. You know, we have a lot of basement bloggers, which it's a bad thing and sort of a good thing. You know, Orrin Woodward always told me that it's not the negative lies that hurt, it's the negative truth.
Sure.
And so a lot of these bloggers, sometimes they're right, and then sometimes they're just terribly wrong, and they can do a lot of damage. And so that's why I think it's really important for companies to participate in social media, to craft the narrative, to be part of the conversation. And another thing, this is sort of a hot topic for me, especially with some of my younger clients, because they get agitated or emotional. And when they see somebody disparaging the company, they want to send a cease and desist. Send them a cease and desist, right? Or if somebody's recruiting
I've
somebody.
received a few of them.
You've received several of those. And so my advice is, look, people are going to say negative things. You're dealing with potentially thousands of people,
Sure.
hopefully tens of thousands of people. You're going to have some negative comments out there, and just use good judgment as far as how far do you want to pursue these people. It's best to put positive out there because that outweighs the negative. Period.
Well, that, and I don't think that company owners ever need to go and debate on other people's blogs. It's like going into somebody else's house and trying to tell them what to do. They're going to have their friends, everybody's going to be there, and it just doesn't work. If you know, Starbucks is a prime example of somebody, when they started seeing negative comments and they realized, hey, this is misinformation, then they just went out and started their own blog, but then they created a team that would go and respond on those blogs and say, hey, we've covered that over here on our site if you want to come and get the truth. So they drove the traffic back to where they could control the story. And I think Herbalife is a prime example because they didn't sit back and say, oh, this too shall pass. You know, as soon as some negative stuff hit, they went on the train. And I mean, they engaged. They didn't even worry about their PR firm. They just started engaging and getting the facts out there. And I think in today's world, if we don't do that, it could be too little too late.
Well, somebody else can then craft the narrative about your company. So it's vital for companies to constantly be communicating, because the more you communicate, over time, trust accumulates.
Sure.
And I gave a talk on this. There's an economic value to trust, right? Stephen Covey's son wrote a book called Speed of Trust.
Yeah.
And it's true, there's a quantifiable value to trust. Well, how do you accrue trust? You communicate often, and number two, you're transparent. And this is another thing that I think is really important in today's marketplace, in this industry. Very important. You purposefully build a professional and ethical sales culture.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't just happen on accident. A lot of companies, they'll launch and they think, I've got a great pay plan, I've got a great product, it's just going to explode on its own. You actually have to, it takes leadership to create the culture that you want. And if you want an ethical culture, it starts at the top. And so I think the buzzword of 2013, it's compliance training. I think compliance training is important.
Sure.
It's boring, but if a lawyer does it right, it can be interesting and engaging, because the FTC, what's happening is they're searching the internet for statements from distributors.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And they're judging the company based on those statements. As a company, you can't say anymore, well, we can't control what they say. Now you're expected to try. You're expected to at least try to educate these people. And so that's really important for companies.
Well, that brings up a question that I have on compliance, because I see all these blogs out here, and not all of them are negative. Some of them are set up to be positive. So they show these people holding up their checks, or they show them talking about stuff. And then I'll go look at the company website, and I see no income disclosure statement. Now, can a company be liable for what's said on a third-party site, utilizing facts, if they haven't somehow communicated with that blog, hey, take this down or something like
This
that?
is going to surprise you, but the answer is yes, they are responsible. Assuming that the person waving the check is a distributor or rep for that company.
Absolutely.
So assuming there's a connection, the FTC published some guidelines last year that says if somebody has a connection to you and they're marketing themselves, or if they're marketing your product or your service inappropriately, it rolls back to the company. So we know that. So here's here's what's important. We just published a very thorough researched article on our site about the FTC's marketing guidelines.
Right.
They just published this stuff, when was it? Was it April, I think, of 2013. And they say, okay, we understand there's a lot of people saying a lot of things out there using Twitter and Facebook and blogs. This is what we want to see. So they gave us some guidelines.
Good.
So with your example, number one, the company needs to have a very thorough income disclosure. Sometimes you see companies that say, well, we're not going to allow income claims.
Yeah.
That's naive, and it's not going to work, because you know your field, they're going to make income claims.
Oh, absolutely.
So you've got to provide them with disclosures. So having good disclosures is step number one. Number two, educating the leaders as far as how to use it. That's step number two. Your scenario, that person holding the check, he would need somewhere in the caption to write, or somewhere on his blog post, the average participant in this business earns between X and Y dollars.
Okay.
Please click the link for a full income disclosure.
Now, what if that's left off? And this is a third-party site. Even this guy, he just got an interview and it looks good. But is that blog then responsible also? I mean, there's some. Is everybody?
Yeah, and so in those guidelines published in 2012, the ones about last year, the people making the endorsements can also be liable. Now, I don't want to scare anybody out there,
no.
because the FTC, they haven't sued bloggers, right? They haven't done that.
Right.
But in as recent as the case they filed against Fortune High Tech Marketing, once they filed that in February of 2013, they did reference these guidelines. They found income claims being made on Twitter. Thought, hey, I've made over $100,000 a year in this business.
Right.
And they referenced the guidelines saying, here's a guy that's in the business. He made this claim, therefore, Fortune High Tech was allegedly responsible. Now, that case wasn't fully litigated to where we can see
What would have happened.
What would have happened. But it should scare people, right? I mean, they're trolling Twitter. They're trolling Facebook. And every company has knucklehead reps out there.
And that's just the FTC. Something that I think distributors don't ever think about, because most of them, in all their life, they've never been audited. But the IRS also looks for things. And if you're out there saying you make all this money, and then they get your tax return and it's not that way, you're opening yourself up
completely
to some issues. I've got a good friend of mine that does make lots of money, and every time he sees somebody put anything up about him, he will have them take it down and say, look, I'll have my attorneys remove it if you don't remove it, because I don't need the IRS or anybody else out here questioning, and I know what I make and what I do. I don't need your help. So that's just word to the wise, I think, for people that don't realize making income claims is not exactly the best thing.
You're on the radar.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad deal when you look at it. I mean, I love income disclosures. Some of your clients really have some really good income disclosure statements now, which I think are great, because I get so tired of seeing the old-fashioned ones, and it's like, now they've got graphs, they really show, they put the time and the energy. I think we all need that. It's good.
Well, step one is having it, and then step two is I really think that companies are going to be judged based on the amount of effort they put into educating the field.
Sure.
Right? So you're going to see some companies have good income disclosures. You're going to see fewer companies actually enforce its policies and, number one, train the leaders to do the right thing, and number two, actually discipline them when they're not doing the right thing. I'm not talking terminations, because nobody likes to be disciplined.
Right.
But you can lock somebody out of their back office.
Right. Or suspend them for 3 weeks.
Suspend them for a little bit of time. At least get some dialogue going. Make an effort, because it's really crucial. Because the company's judged based on the statements made in the field. It's not just income claims; it's also product claims. So,
that's true.
You see all these people showing you before and after pictures. I lost 40 pounds in a month using this company's product. Same thing. If it's an atypical result, they've got to provide the average results. So if you sell a weight loss product like a Visalis, for example, or whoever, you got to make sure that these people are providing averages.
Okay, so the same thing for skincare? Because I see now seems to be the big thing. I'm seeing skincare before and after pictures and all that. So any type of claim.
Completely. If it's atypical, then the FTC, what they do is they say, we assume that a consumer will expect to achieve that result.
Absolutely.
So if you're giving a consumer an above average result, you've got to show the average.
Well, and
it's tough.
Well, it would be, but here's something else y'all need to know. Don't doctor the pictures, because there's a gigantic database of pictures, and you can put a picture in and it'll show you how many websites that picture's on. So if it's not one from your company, don't use a before and after picture. And I've already seen that.
I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, we've seen the XYZ company, and then over here we'll see this listed 3 times. It's like, wait a minute, y'all are getting your companies in trouble, you can get yourself in trouble, and I just don't. I think it's a lack of education. It's a lack of compliance, not in a negative way, but the fact that people just don't know. We're out here building a business. We're excited. Our upline's building a business. Nobody's ever taken the time to say, hey, there's some do's and don'ts. If we run within the guidelines, everything's great. We cross those guidelines, we open ourselves up to all kinds of stuff.
Completely, yeah. Education's important. And I've actually sent a few cease and desist to Hollywood, because every time you see a picture of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, it's actually my body.
Oh, I should have known.
He won't. But I never get anywhere.
Well, when you see Tonto, that's really good.